Right, I'm going to make a table saw sled with Matchfit grooves running vertically and horizontally. It's one of those multi-purpose sleds, but there's going to be a couple of bits about mine that will be different, but I'll get into that when we get there. I haven't posted much recently. I'm not monetized or anything. I just do this for the fun, and if it's not fun, I don't do it. Plus, it's been pretty cold in here over the winter and sort of Christmas and New Year and etc. That's why. So all I've got are two of these shelves, and annoyingly, neither of these on their own is going to be quite big enough, so I'm going to have to join them with dominoes, but again, I'll get into that in a sec. These are just spare shelves from a unit that's in our lounge that we don't use, so I'm going to sand the paint back as the first job, so start with that and I'll talk about it as we go through. And we've got our first visitor. Here's Jemima. Hey Jemima. Now Jemima recently, can you see there's got a little kink in her tail? Unfortunately, she broke her tail, but she's recovering very well, and she's got movement both sides, so it's just going to be a little kink. Thanks for your bum, Jemima. Yes, and one of our other cats, Jenny's also had an injury, but if she comes to visit, I'll talk about that. But, you know, always nice to have cats in the workshop. Yeah, that's right. Back to the project. Here I am sanding. I'm not trying to take it back to bare MDF because I don't want to sand through the hard face of the MDF into the fluffy stuff. I just want to get it smooth and flat. I don't care if there's a bit of paint left on. I've cut the pieces. This is going to be the main bulk of it, but then I'm going to use a seam of dominoes along here to join that. I deliberately haven't put the dominoes along the middle because I'm going to be having the Matchfit grooves. And also this is the mitre bar, I'll talk about this in a sec, that's going to go on there, that will slide in the mitre groove. And I didn't want any of those, either the Matchfit grooves or the mitre bar, to be near the, you know, running along the same seam as the dominoes. So that's why they're over to the side. I've also had to do an extra bit of layout. Let me just grab the camera and I'll talk through that. Okay, so having the dominoes avoid things that way hasn't been too much of an issue, because I'm going to have 4 Matchfit grooves and then that thing's going to go largely in the middle. It's been a bit more tricky this way, because running this way, I need these, I'm going to have 6 Matchfit grooves this way, 4 this way, 6 this way. And these pencil lines represent where they're going to have to go. And I've laid those out because every Matchfit groove is going to have to miss a domino, so I need to make sure the dominoes fall in between. I'm also going to have to miss the screws or the hardware that I use to attach this mitre bar onto the thing. And also, so these black plastic bits, these are the cams that allow you to tighten it in the mitre slot, which are great. The problem is the countersunk holes for screwing it down or bolting it down, it is threaded if you want, are on this side, which mean that you can't access these hex head, Allen head bits. Once it's screwed down, those are going to be face down on the board, so I'm going to have to drill holes to be able to access those from the other side. That is a shortcoming of these cheap, I just got these on AliExpress, I'm sure you can get them on Temu or Banggood as well. These are about £7 I think for a 450mm mitre bar. You could also get 300mm ones for a bit less, probably like a £5 or something. Overall, pretty good. The slightly annoying thing is just that having to access these from the other side. I don't know why they didn't do it the other way around, but anyway. So I'm going to have to put that down, make sure that the holes miss the Matchfit grooves, and also make sure that these points where I'm going to potentially tighten up the cams also miss all the Matchfit points. In order to do that, I'm going to have it offset slightly, but to be honest, I was thinking about doing that anyway, so that I can have one side with a little bit more in-feed or out-feed, depending on which way around you use it. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, a bit of layout early on, just to save myself some trouble later there. So that is all glued up, dominoes in and clamped up and dried. Using, I realised I could, if I put the seam along a Matchfit groove, I could use a clamp to try and, like as a caul, to try and hold it level. So it's pretty cold at the moment, so I'm going to leave that at least overnight, maybe even 24 hours before I come back to it. Right, this has dried up overnight. Had plenty of time. I'm not going to do anything too strenuous with it though. I'm just going to do a bit of layout work, because the next thing I want to do is fix on the mitre bar and then run it through the table saw to get lovely parallel edges exactly where they're going to be, And then once I've got those parallel edges, I can use the track saw with a rail square to get perpendicular edges. And at that point, I'm ready to do some final layout and start routing some grooves. So let's get these clamps off. I've marked out my center line where this is going to go, so that will be for the fixing holes, and then I've also marked out some points here where I need to drill the access holes to be able to tighten these little cam, they're not actually cams, they're expanding plastic things, but anyway, I've marked out some holes that I need to drill there to be able to get an Allen wrench in to do that. So next thing's to drill those holes. So I think you probably got my reaction on camera there. I'm sure I'll include it in the edit. I've made an absolutely ridiculous blunder. I mean, it's so obvious, it's so embarrassingly obvious now I look at it, but I didn't even think about it. I've done the whole design assuming that the distance between this mitre slot and the blade is the same as the distance between that mitre slot and the blade, and you can clearly see it isn't. Like, it just, at no point did I actually measure both of them. I just measured this one and doubled it to get the whole design, thinking I could slide the sled through, have it cut perfectly on that side, slide the sled through on that side, have it cut perfectly on the other, and use it both ways round on both sides if I wanted, because the distance would be the same. Obviously that isn't the case, and whilst if I do it on this side, that is perfect now. It's right up against the blade there. It's unplugged, don't worry. And this side, if I were to go through, I've got quite a bit extra to chop off, which I think is going to leave this an awful lot thinner than I want. And you can see I've got this tiny little strip down here now that I've dominoed on for no reason. I could easily have done the whole thing out of one piece. And obviously if I turn it round this way, which I was thinking I would be able to, and put it in, I've got like 80 mils there from the thing to the blade now. I don't really want to make this any thinner. I'd like to have the support for pieces for, you know, a bit of length to the Matchfit grooves, but short of starting the whole thing again and just doing it a design based on using it on one side, I think I'm just going to have to run it through that way and have this sled a lot thinner with a ludicrously thin dominoed strip on the side for no reason. Oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm such an idiot. Anyway, yeah, that's what I'm going to have to do, I think. I've changed my mind. I've decided that having a wider sled that I can only use on one side of the blade is more useful than a narrow sled that I can use on both sides. So, what I'm going to have to do, annoyingly, is slice off the domino strip and obviously a bit further in to get all the dominoes as well, and then reattach another strip with dominoes wider, because I've cut this one down too far now. This is, as I say, this is the side that's got the 80 mils to the blade, and this is the side I want with the mitre bar slightly closer to the front. I want it to go through that way. So I'm going to do all this off camera. I'm not going to make you watch that. Right, it's a couple of days later because life got in the way. This has had a couple of days to glue up, so I'm going to sort that out, give it a quick sand. But the reason I'm doing a video, I know I said I wasn't going to make you watch any of this, but this thing has turned up a couple of days ago, and oh my god, what I think this might be one of the most revolutionary power tools of the last couple of years. It's a 150mm sander, right? So not 125, this is 125mm using an 18-volt battery, and it's pretty chunky and not very well balanced. This is 150mm using these little 12-volt batteries. This is a 2.5 amp hour high output one. And this, I mean, this is going to replace my Metabo. So I've been using this Metabo 150mm sander, which is a copy of the Merca. And 150mm sanders seem to have just been corded. 240 volts, corded and much heavier. 12 volts, much lighter, same power output, much less vibration. This is phenomenal. And there's two versions of this. There's the 5mm stroke and the 2.5mm stroke. I'm not sponsored by Milwaukee, by the way. I just think this is the 5mm stroke. Just no other tool brand is doing 12-volt tools like Milwaukee. Like, it's not even close. They are an order of magnitude ahead of everyone else. Like, Ryobi don't have a 12-volt platform as far as I'm aware, which I think is weird. DeWalt have a 12-volt platform, but it's like an afterthought. There's very little tools on it. Bosch, I think, do an okay 12-volt platform. Parkside stuff, 12 volts, quite good when you can get it. You can buy the, you know, as if there's a particular tool you want, you can get it like once a year. We haven't, you know, I've got the 12-volt router from Parkside, which is great, but I had to import that from Europe. It wasn't even available in the UK at any point, or hasn't been so far. Milwaukee, just stratospherically ahead. I'm not even, like I said, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, love to be, but stratospherically ahead of everybody else when it comes to 12-volt tools. And this sander and the 2.5mm one, absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to use this to give this just a quick sand along the seam and dominoes and then crack on. Anyway, that's me being effusive. Oh, by the way, dust collection, you can go right or left. You get both adapters to do it, and which is much better. Again, coming straight backwards out of the Metabo, it just always wants to tip backwards. And I'm sure this will want to tip sideways a little bit. You know, you're not going to get away from the fact that you've got a big dust hose, but it's still much better because I'm going to be sanding there and my dust extraction's there. So having it going out the right just works much better for me. Anyway, I'll shut up about that. A little plug, I suppose, but I'm so impressed with it. You know, there's a lot of people on YouTube and on social media singing the praises of these new sanders. I can see why. Absolutely brilliant. If you're umming and ahhing about getting on a 12-volt platform, get on Milwaukee. Doesn't matter if you're on a different brand. I'm DeWalt for my 18-volt stuff. If you're DeWalt, Makita, Festool, whatever for your 18-volt Bosch, you can keep all that. But for 12-volt, go Milwaukee. Like, nobody else is even close. Anyway, that was a little aside. I just felt it was worth saying. So let's get on with this. Okay, so there's my Matchfit grooves. The reason I did 3 that way was because trying to do 4, it was starting to fall in awkward places like the seam of dominoes. It was quite close, or the screws, it was going to be close. So 3 is plenty along there. So I've got 3 and 6. So next thing is to use those offcuts over there to make some little fences that are going to go on here. Right, I'm just making the fences out of these pieces of scrap. And one thing on the width of these, in this dimension. So this is about, what is it? Nearly 40 mils wide in that dimension. And that's working really well because if I get, this is 18 mil stock, this is 12 mil stock. If I wanted to slide a Matchfit clamp underneath the fence, reach over it and clamp down on the other side, you can see that's working really well. It's clamped that piece, it's not touching this piece, and that's perfect. Originally, I had made this about 45 mil wide because I thought it looked better being a little bit wider. Having this 40 mils works much better because 45 mils, it didn't have quite enough space. This clamp was actually clamping down on this piece rather than this piece. So if you're making one, that's just something to consider. You might want to make your fences about 40 mil wide, and then you can reach over them with a standard Matchfit quick clamp. Now then, with the stems of these things, when I made these slots here, I used my domino because I had a 5mm cutter and I didn't have a 5mm router bit. And these things, because Microjig, sorry, is an American company, these things are, as you can see, about 4.7-ish. I don't know what they are in imperial, but anyway, 4.7-ish mil. So a 5mm cutter is ideal. This time I've actually splashed out and I've got myself a 5mm cutter, and that's 20mm depth there, so it should be fine to go through the 18mm stock, obviously in a few passes. I'm not going to try and do it all at once. So I'm going to centre that up and do that now. So there we go, I've got a sled that runs a little bit stiff in the table saw, but that's probably better than too loose, to be honest with you. And I could always use this sliding bit of the Evolution anyway. Obviously I need to fit these things on, but just for the purposes of showing you, got a long fence and a short fence, both of which run nicely in the Matchfit grooves, have a good range of motion. And what I've also added to them, these little bits on both of them, just here, so that if I wanted to, I can flip it over and I can use that as a positive sort of stop if I'm doing repeat tapers or something like that. But I've only put it on one side so that I can just flip it out of the way and just use it as a normal fence if I want to, and I've got one there too. But I mean, I imagine most of the time, let's say I'm tapering a cut or something, I'm probably going to do it, you know, this way. Obviously I need to be careful to make sure the fences don't overhang the side, otherwise they're going to get cut. So yeah, if I'm putting straight edges on stuff or tapering, or even just, I could use it as a crosscut sled in a pinch, as long as I take time to set this up at 90 degrees to the edge. But that edge is obviously has been cut by the blade, so that edge is obviously going to be where the blade runs. So, and as long as I've got a square, I can set that up at 90. I can even take these fences that I've made on my drill press table, and being Matchfit, they're also obviously fully compatible with the sled, so win-win. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Hopefully there's some bits in that video that might be helpful if you're making one yourself.